Welcome, everyone. This is an auspicious and distributed event where we're saying goodbye to one more of our homes here in Portland and being prepared and preparing ourselves for a virtual existence and eventually landing somewhere. So we're going to begin with the recitation of the Takpo Kagyu and the supplication. Actually, Reina's Gardner is going to say the four dharmas of Gampopa and then the recitation of the supplication to the Takpo Kagyu. And I'm going to put that chant on the screen.
We decided to start this way because this is going back historically was the chant that we did at the time we were first a Dharma study group. Jane, you remember this, you're nodding your head.
Regarding the supplication to the Tagpo Kagyu, hi, Carol. Tagpo, the physician from Tagpo, was Gampopa, who founded the monastic aspect lineage of the Kagyu. And Russell Rogers wrote just a couple lines about this chant, putting it in the context of our Shambhala lineage. And Russell Rogers has passed away. He was one of our ritual masters of knowledge in the community. So he says, the Kagyu lineage is one of the three main Tibetan lineages that form the basis of Shambhala Buddhism. Each of these lineages contributed a unique approach to enlightenment. The particular approach of the Kagyu lineage is marked by a very methodical progression of practice and study that leads deeper and deeper into their specialty, Mahamudra. Many of the practices that we do, including Shamatha Vipassana, Kagyu Nundro, Vajrayogini, Chakrasambhara, the Mahamudra retreats, and the 6 yogas of Naropa are all part of the Kagyu Mahamudra system. And in particular, in the early years, that was the context in which Trungpa Rinpoche was teaching, as I recall. So John, I'll let you let us know when we're going to start. Do you want to wait a little while?
I think it's about 6 minutes after the hour, so maybe we should just jump in. So I'll make you the, we're gonna record this in speaker view. And if you'll start with the supplicate with the four dharmas of Gampopa, and then I'll flash the supplication on the screen.
And I'll be unmuted, but everyone else will be muted. Is that right?
That's right.
Could I say one more thing, though, John? And Reina was reminding me, this chant, we say it in a monotone and a fairly rapid cadence, as if there's a drum, but there's no drum, but it's a monotone and it moves along fairly quickly. Will you share the screen? Grant your blessing so that my mind may be one with the Dharma. Grant your blessing so that Dharma may progress along the path. Grant your blessing so that the path may clarify confusion. Grant your blessing so that confusion may dawn as wisdom. Great Vajradhara, Tilo, Naro, Marpa, Mila, Lord of Dharma, Gampopa, knower of 3 times omniscient Karmapa, holders of the 4 great 8 lesser lineages, Drikung, Taklung, Talpa, these Vistrupa, and so on, masters of the profound path of Mahamudra, incomparable protectors of beings, the Tagpo Kagyu, I supplicate the Kagyu Gurus, I hold your lineage, grant your blessing so that I will follow your example. Revulsion is the foot meditation as is taught to this meditator who is not to food and well to cuts the ties to this life. Grant your blessing so that I desire for honor and gain devotion is the head of meditation as is taught the Guru opens to the treasury of oral instructions to this meditator who continually supplicates him. Grant your blessing so that genuine devotion born in me awareness is the body of meditation as is taught. Whatever rises is fresh, the essence of realization to this meditator. Simply without altering it, grant your blessing so that my meditation is free from conception. The essence of thoughts is Dharmakaya, as is taught nothing but everything arises from it. To this meditator who arises in unceasing play, grant your blessing so that I realize separate of samsara and nirvana through all my births. May I not be separated from the perfect true, and so enjoy the splendor of Dharma, perfecting the virtues of the past and Burmese. May I speedily attain the state of Vajradhara.
Unmute myself. And now Gardner and Raina and everybody together, I think, as we see fit, are going to participate in kind of recollections and reflections on the history of Portland Shambhala. So Raina and Gardner and those who also want to contribute, here you go.
Do people hear me okay? Raina and I talked. We're just going to do, for me, a quick chronological order. I was a little bit in town ahead of Raina, and I'll just shorten some notes that I put in the archives. And probably this is where Jane would want to pitch in memories too. This goes from 1976 to 1983. Real quickly, I'll mention some highlights, okay? So I moved to Portland in 1976, and I learned that there was a group of students inspired by Trungpa Rinpoche who were preparing for the visit of His Holiness, the Karmapa, the 16th Karmapa. And there was a large Tibetan diaspora community in Oregon at that time. And also the Shangpa Kagyu students, KCC, sponsored this visit. But our group of Dharma study group folks had a small audience with His Holiness in a house on Southeast 14th and Oak, right near our Shambhala Center. And the Black Crown ceremony was held at the Merrillhurst Chapel in 1976. So then in 1977, a group of students gathered around that energy, and we began to have Tuesday night and a person named Richard Boak began to host us in that house on 14th and Southeast 14th and Oak. In 1978, Richard Boak had moved along, and Kevin Geary and Lisa Johnson were our hosting in the various apartments they lived in. And Lisa was our chief proselytizer, very enthusiastic, and would meet people everywhere who would wind up showing up at our meetings. But our method of advertising was postering, and she was what kept new people coming. And we had our first weekend program that year, 1978, at PCC Sylvania in the Pine Room, and meditation instruction was in the cafeteria, which was empty except for us. In 1979 and 1980, Brad Klaus took over hosting, but he eventually had a lot of family needs and also moved way to the west side, and it wasn't working out too well. So there was kind of a period of dormancy. But in 1980, His Holiness Karmapa came again to Portland, held the Black Crown ceremony in the Masonic Temple, which is part of the Art Museum now. And there were some Shambhala Kasung members involved with that visit. Now, at his first visit, he looked out the window and commented very favorably on the location of downtown Portland with low hills in the back and a river in front. His specialty is geomantic knowledge. Well, in his second visit, he said he would see us again in 1982, but he died in 1981. So then in 1982, I actually was appointed for a period of time as coordinator of the Dharma Study Group, the first appointed coordinator. But in 1983, several important women moved to town and others, and Raina was going to talk some more about 1983 onward. And Jane, now your time is when to when?
I think probably 84 or 85.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, so in 1984, I moved here from Boulder, and by that time I was studying Vajrayana, and then also Liza Goldblatt moved, who was a very experienced practitioner, and we first rented a house on 15th and Stanton, and I think John, I took a picture of it the other day, and it was a very auspicious house. It was laid out in the exact way of the Kalapa Court, Rinpoche's house in Boulder. And the landlady's brother was a Naropa student. And when we walked in to check out the place, there was a Buddha on the mantle. And in the attic, you see on the third floor there, there was a nice carpet and a nice chair in the corner, and it felt like the teacher had already arrived. So a few of us lived there for several years, including Liza, Jim Dewey, a few other people, Martha McDowell. I met my future husband in that house, who was Martha's brother. And after that, we met in a series of houses, one that Liza Goldblatt and I shared, and then from then on a few houses that Liza lived in on her own. And then the biggest change was in 1995 when we moved into the first public space, which was in the building we're in now, though we were in a different suite. And all during this time, we would have little weekend programs. I think we had our first level one, which I think one or two people came to in a little motel on MLK near the convention center. And then in 1995, when we moved in, we started growing. And from that point on, and I think in 84, Jane, was when Irene Lundquist, for whom the Irene Lundquist Scholarship Program is named after, that was her legacy, and also the green carpet that we're all familiar with was placed there after Irene died. So we started kind of being a little more vigorous then. We had a series of directors. We had myself and Irene were co-directors at one point, and then Georgianne Parker, David Parker's ex-wife. She was the one who shepherded us to become a full Shambhala Center and got the beautiful new door that we have. We had, during this time, we had Eva Wong. I know some people were here when Eva Wong came several times and gave us suggestions of changes to make, the side door and where to place things in the Vajrayana shrine room, and having a Kasum desk and various things like that. We had people coming in from other sanghas. Penny and Marco came, Gordon Rapol came, John and Nancy Smith came, Jack and Ann came. Recently, Mark Turnoy has come, Janie came, lots of people. Robert Archer came, Robert Higgins, whose mother lived here, Bruce and Timmery. We've had a lot of experienced Shambhalians move here. Bettina moved here. I think Bettina maybe is listening.
Yes, I'm listening. I'm on the car.
Yes. Allison moved here a couple years ago. She came. So we had a lot of growth from people coming from the outside, as well as people coming in from Portland. And Jack Bodner was one of our directors. We had other directors, Paul Ruffalo, Lisa Ritchie, Lisa Stanley, and now John and Janie. We several times almost bought a new building, which in retrospect, given what's happening now, is probably just as well that we had not made such a big investment. So maybe there's Lisa Ritchie, who a few of us are still in touch with. She's in Toledo, Ohio. She went there to help take care of her mother, who was very ill with Parkinson's. Her mother died in this past year. Other notable events were the passing of Irene Lundquist. That became in some ways just a very marvelous community project. I'm sure there's several of us here who remember that. That was a very intense and rich situation. We've had various visits from teachers. The Sakyam came 3 times. Once he came after a retreat in Seattle, and it was on a New Year's Eve and at PSU, and we thought we were just gonna, have 50 or 60 people, and we ended up having 300. They just kept coming and coming and coming. It was very exciting, and it was raining, and it was New Year's Eve, so that was pretty tremendous. And then he came up 2 other times for book tours. We also had, and maybe I'll just kind of flip through these, and then afterwards, people have remembrances of specific events. They can share it. We've had Mingyur Rinpoche. We've had Anam Thubten, President Richard Rioch, Prajwal Ratna Vajracharya. We've had Eva Wong. We had Khenpo Tsultrim Gyamtso, I believe, several times. Let's see. And a lot of different acharyas, a lot of different vow ceremonies. We've had Christy Cashman, Emily Bauer, Fleet Mall, Lynn Lyon, Galen Ferguson, Jenny Warwick, John Rockwell, Richard John, Susan Chapman, Emily Bauer. I'm probably repeating myself. Eva Wong taught Qigong whenever she came, when she would come to do feng shui. visits and consultations. So it's been a very rich time. We've had a lot of teachings in this particular shrine room, a lot of effort, a lot of many volunteer hours, cleaning, beautifying, donating, singing, dancing, exercising, meditating, teaching, reading, meetings, gatherings, toasts, many toasts, all kinds of things. So that's just a little bit to maybe perk some memories that people might want to share. And John was thinking we might, there's looks like
It was a dog
Midsummer's Day or something.
Summer's Day, a dog beauty contest.
Yes, I see your dog, John.
Yeah.
The little guy. So maybe just opening it up to things that people remember or things that people will miss or feelings about having been part of the community and what's happening now. So maybe John, you can take over.
Yeah, Jane, please.
Jane.
Ben.
You know, what I want to say and what I remember so clearly is when we moved out of Liza's basement and into the place where the center is now, and how we were in one room. And when we were in that one room, the shrine and everything was in one cupboard. And you would come in and unlock the cupboard and pull everything out and set up the room and set up the shrine. And then when it was all over with, you pull everything in and put it back in. So it was like we not only had the shrine room, we had the shrine closet. And I remember so much when we moved into the larger room, it was just like, hallelujah. What a change that was to not have to set up and take down every single time.
But actually, at first, when we were in that big space, we were sharing it with the kind of a New Age Christian group, and we had a shrine that had handles on it, and we kind of had an area that we stored everything, and then we would bring it out each time. But then they left, and we took over the space.
Right. Forgotten that. Yeah. And in those early days when I first started down in the basement of Liza's, first of all, I was such a neophyte. I didn't even know what Buddhism was, much less Shambhala or anything else. I sort of just came flying in. But in those days, you had to, in order to do level 1, I went up to Vancouver, British Columbia. I mean, there was no level 1 anywhere nearby. It seems so antiquated now or so far away, but that's the way it was then. And it's remarkable how far along the center came and how many people have been involved and how much wonderful karma and dharma and everything has come from there. And it's, even though I'm not a part of it now, it was like when I heard the news that we were not going to be there anymore and that this was happening, it was just like, oh my God, it's like such a solid part of my life at one period of time. It was like, I felt like I just really needed to be here. And I'm really glad to be here. And I was really glad to do the chants again. It was like, I loved those chants. Yeah.
Yeah, in thinking about doing those chants, I was thinking that in some ways I feel like they make me weep to say them now again. You know, they're just kind of like so embedded in somewhere back here, you know. And I don't know whether we'll be able to hear Anandi sing the anthem, but I recorded it yesterday, and I called her up and said, hey, are you going to be there? No, she's working. Could you just, sing the anthem in a recording? And she said, sure, turn the recording on. Boom, she sang the whole thing, knows the words. Like, you know, we've been marked by the Dharma in some way, you know.
Yeah, I almost could have chanted that without the words. Almost. Now that's 30 years ago, maybe. It was like, I loved it. Yeah, it's nice. I thank you for doing that, Gardner, and thank you for opening with that, because it's sort of like, I know in my file drawer I have those chants, and it's like, I think I'll pull that out and just look at them again and maybe do it a little bit.
What is that about? What is that about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me,
Something
that has always been one of the most wonderful chants, and I've always loved it. And was really sorry when it stopped being a regular part of our chanting lineup, because it is just so full of wisdom. I just love it and always have.
I wonder, maybe we could, you know, with a nod to both the Kagyu and the Nyingma, maybe we could consider restarting that chant along with the 7-line supplication to Padmakara, so we have both the Kagyu and the Nyingma, and then do the Shambhala, because those are kind of the three lineages that we're a part of.
I would be all for that. I would love
I still remember when I was living in Boulder, and I was driving to work, and I didn't have time to do the chants before I left, and I was driving along, and I was saying awareness is the body of meditation, and I was so in my mind that I almost hit a bicyclist saying awareness is the body of meditation.
There's a little irony there, don't you think? Well, I didn't come along to Shambhala until somewhere in the mid-2000s. And one of my earliest memories, actually it's Joan Sears who drugged me to the Shambhala Center. She had been to hear the Sakyong speak on one of his book tours and said, you know, you want to go? I had been curious about Buddhism for some years, and mostly from traveling in Asia, but couldn't make heads or tails of it, and had started sort of dropping into various sanghas in Portland, trying to find a place that felt like a fit to me, and never quite feeling welcomed in. And then Joan said, you want to go check out the Shambhala place? You know, I heard this guy speak, and kind of curious. And so we went, and soon after the first time we went, there was some big event at the center, and for the life of me, I do not remember what it was. What I do remember, those were the days when the place was packed. We haven't seen that in a while. And I remember talking to Mr. Bodner. You know, I was asking some questions about what is this Shambhala lineage thing and blah, 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 blah. And Jack was very earnestly explaining the lineage to me, and the choice of the Sakyong as the lineage holder. And we talked for quite a long time. I am sure you wouldn't remember that, Jack, but you made an impression on me.
So maybe just a few thoughts. So I moved to, I'm a native Portlander, and I was living, before 1999, I was living in Halifax. And one aside is that, you know, I've been a member of the Sangha since 1974. And when I think I told my dad, who lives in Portland, I'd heard that His Holiness Karmapa was going to be doing the Black Crown ceremony in Portland. And my dad actually went to the Black Crown ceremony in 1980. I'm not quite sure. He's probably checking out to find out what kind of strange sect or whatever cult I've gotten
The
involved
kind of cult you had joined.
in. Right. I remember his only comment was that he noticed that a lot of people there knew each other. So anyway, when I came in 1999, as I say, I was in Halifax. So it was, and I walked into the Portland Shambhala Center. I think I'd been there once before. I didn't particularly like the space, in terms of the layout and the long shrine room. But I remember who was sitting in that room when I first came in: Robert Higgins and Morgan, and I think Gordon Rapole and people like that. But it really, the Shambhala Center has been really important to me personally. Being, I was in Boulder for a long time and then in Halifax. And I actually had problems fitting in or figuring out what my role was, because just such a large community. And moving here, and I didn't jump in right away, but it was just easy and obvious how to connect. And so it's been really, provide instant community and good friends and so on. So it's always been really important to me. I think one kind of highlight, I think this is during part of the time I was the director, was the first visit of, maybe it was the second visit of the Sakyong to Portland, which it was a book tour for turning the mind into an ally. And so the community really came together on that. It was, Sakyong brought about 7 people with him, including President Rioch. And I think Raina and I were co-directors of the visit. We set up a household for him in Kristen's house. Kristen was away. Nancy was head of the household. And the Kasang really came together. We set up a number of events for the Sakyong, including a public talk at, I forget the name of the church, downtown Portland, which had over 300 people.
The Congregational Church, I think.
I think so, right. And also setting up engagements for President Rioch at the same time. Anne was kind of shepherding President Rioch around. And I think that President Rioch, I think Jane offered her house during that visit, and that's where President Rioch stayed.
That's right.
And also when Christy had that 10-day visit,
Yeah.
Christy Cashman.
Yeah. Later we had a 10-day visit from Acharya Cashman, where we overworked her for 10 days. And she, Jane graciously opened up her house, or I know Jane moved out actually. And so Acharya Cashman had her house as a residence.
Who is that? Jane who?
Jane
Comerford.
That Jane.
Up right, at least on our screen.
She just spoke a while ago.
She came for a long time and then hasn't been around for a number of years, but she saw this was happening and wanted to say hello to old friends.
And by the way, it's very nice to see you, Jane.
Thank you. Nice to see everybody.
I ran into
And
Jane.
noted author about coastal and local subjects.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I still have your Neocani chicken recipe. Well, you know, speaking like what Jack was saying, that Jack and I both had lived in big centers, Jack in Boulder and Halifax, and I from Boulder. And coming to a small center was really a place that I could do something. In Boulder, I just was, you know, just a member. I would just show up and do things, you know, maybe volunteer to staff a Shambhala training, but that was it. And then when I decided to come here, the Dharma Dhatu director, who was the person in charge of all the different centers around the world, Jan Watson, said, oh, just, you know, I know you don't have training, but just go and give meditation instruction and just teach, you know, that's okay. Just, you can do it. I trust you. Go ahead. And, you know, just as in life, if you come from a big organization to a small one, you can actually start to do things and learn things and contribute more. And I have to say that moving here was probably one of the best things that I've done in my life, because it gave me opportunities to grow in ways that I'm sure never would have happened had I stayed in Boulder, you know, to become a teacher. And then when we, I kind of have this, I feel like I kind of have this history of being the one who, when a new role is announced in the Shambhala community, I get to try it out first. So I was the first meditation instructor that came to town and teacher. And then when we had the warrior of the center, I became the first warrior, and then John and Nancy took after me. And then when the Shastri role came up, I got to do that one too. So it's really helped me grow personally in many ways that I would not have had opportunities to before, which has been really a great blessing in my life. I'm sure my life would have been much different had I not come here under the circumstances that I did. And it was really, I noticed when both when John and Nancy came, and as Jack said, when he came, that he didn't really do much for a while. And I remember John and Nancy, you were here for almost a year before we even ever knew you were here. And I remember, as I mentioned, a lot of people would be coming new to town, and often they would come from other centers where there was full-blown Shambhala culture going on. And they would say, oh, well, how come you don't do this? And you should do this way and that way. And we should be doing, you know, this program and this format and this protocol. And I would say, just wait 6 months. Just see what people are doing. Just see what the culture is. See what's needed. See what people are ready for. And after about 6 months, if you have an idea, then speak up. And if you want to help make it happen, that's great. And so it was kind of funny. It kind of became a routine, because, you know, at each point, it's like even now our Sangha is different, and we have to kind of say, okay, what are we doing now? What's appropriate? What's needed? What's the interest? So it's kind of been that way all along. And there were times that we had all kinds of classes going on and all kinds of Shambhala training going on, and week tuns and vow ceremonies and all kinds of things. And times when it's been, you know, like the last couple of years where it's been quieter. So it's really kind of up and down.
Everyone, I have a visitor.
Yes, who's that?
Some of you might remember. Here, please take my chair. I'm going to turn the video on.
Hi,
Who is that?
my name is Kevin Geary.
Oh my goodness.
Hi, Rena.
Hi, Kevin. And you see Gardner up in the, oh my goodness.
Your name and Lisa's name was mentioned under the dates of 1977.
Yes.
My goodness, are you still living here in Portland?
Yes, I'm just about to exit.
Oh.
I've been here for a while, kind of undercover. But I'm on my way, hopefully eventually out of the country, back to Asia. And then I don't know if you know this, probably not. I lived in India, in Bir, for a long time. India, Himachal Pradesh. So, but does anybody want to hear a funny story about the old days?
Yes.
Of
Sure.
course.
Well, I want to say about the first kind of my first hosting an important teacher in Portland, Oregon, which I believe somebody can help me with the years. I think it was 75. It was when His Holiness Jawa Karmapa came.
Yes, he came in 76 and 1980, but 76.
Yes. And Gardner, I can't remember if you were there or not.
I was peripherally, I had a family and I just came to town, but yeah, I was somewhat involved.
Okay. Anyway, so we were preparing for His Holiness to visit the Dharma study group, which was in a couple's apartment here in Southeast. I don't remember exactly where.
14th and Oak.
All right, Gardner can fill in the details.
Yeah.
I'm more of the punchline.
Do it.
So I was in charge of making tea for His Holiness, and I had no idea what that meant. And so I called up to RMDC, and they gave me this recipe, which I couldn't understand how anybody could ever drink something like that. And so I boiled this tea cake in like a gallon or a couple gallons of water and added some baking soda and some butter. I think that was it. Can't remember if that was all I put in. Anyway, so I went to a great, I researched it. I thought, it was going to be okay. But I couldn't understand why anybody would ever want to drink that. That's the first part. And then we had some out of town help that was helping us with the visit. And we were getting real excited and real, feeling a lot of enthusiasm and cleaning up everything and making it very nice and everything. And then His Holiness came, and he was very, what I remember, I was very young, but it seemed like he was shining, like he was just beaming and shining. And it was almost like there were no corners, dark corners left. It was just all shining light. And that was just my impression. And he told a little story. He said how he missed the buffalo and the eagles here. He had just come up from, I believe, Arizona, where he'd given the empowerments to the Native American people there. And then, I'm not good at speaking, as you know, as you can tell. I offered some tea through his translator, Tashi Namdo, and he picked it up and took a sip and then blew it out onto the floor and asked Tashi La to bring him some more tea, his own flask. So that's the funny story anyway. Portland Dharma Study Group, a work in progress.
That's a real treasure to our oral tradition. I will be back soon with a battery.
I went from the light to feeling, what did I do? But I think I convinced the people I said that live there, I said, maybe don't mop that up.
No, Kevin, weren't we like all clustered in a little bedroom up on the second floor? And
Yeah.
he was like, there were people stuck in the hall and he insisted that we come in.
Yes.
And it was just fun.
Yeah, it was very fun and very exciting. And to see that there's still Dharma here in Portland makes me very happy, I want to say, because that was always my wish for this place, having come to the Dharma here in Portland myself, and having primarily been with the Dharma study group. I actually came through a different Lama, but to, Trungpa Rinpoche's Sangha. It's very touching that there's still Dharma here and that it's surviving the ups and downs of life in the West and Portland in specific. And I'm really happy about that. So I just wanted to say that. And I am donating my library to your center on departure. That's what I'm doing here. I just happened to be driving by and thought, oh, I should stop and ask them if they want that. Okay. Thank you.
Nice to see you, Kevin. It's Mark Turnoy from Boulder.
Yeah, Marpa House.
Yeah. A few moons ago.
Yeah. So out of Korea. Very good.
Yeah. Good.
Nice to see you.
Good journeys.
Thank you. All right, I'll let whoever it is that's running this back online. I just happen to spontaneously be here, so I hope that contributes to some kind of positive energy to this place and to beings in this place. Okay.
Thank you. Auspicious timing, Kevin. Good to see you.
That it flourishes and remains throughout time. Okay.
Gardner, you were going to say something about Khenpo Tsultrim Gyaltso. Gardner, you were going to talk about Khenpo Tsultrim Gyaltso?
Sorry, I was on mute.
Yes.
Well, it's just very personal that I'm understanding later in my life that in my early connection with Trungpa Rinpoche in the very early 70s, I really became enraptured with the Kagyu Mahamudra attitude and approach that we were kind of referencing at the beginning with our chant. And I've understood that the method of teaching Kagyu Mahamudra is by word, symbol, and thought. And I've sort of thought back recently that I understood that Trungpa Rinpoche was teaching by word, but I didn't know that he was constantly teaching by symbolism and also by special kinds of thought communication and bonding with people. But so I realized that the communication by symbol is something that I'm really interested in looking at in hindsight and understanding, and I'll be missing because I have felt that the place that we held as a space with our volunteer work was close to the mind of the teacher. Could be the Sakyong, but the symbolism was very much created and discovered by Trungpa Rinpoche. And we're kind of putting that in storage. So I'm missing that kind of support a lot. But Khenpo Tsultrim Gyaltso came and his specialty was Mahamudra, but did any of you encounter him? He taught a form of song. He was a meditator like Milarepa in his early 20s. He spent years in caves, but he came to Portland and he was teaching, and his basic specialty is Mahamudra, and he was in our meditation shrine room when the shrine was on the tall wall, if you can remember that. And if you entered late, everybody was staring at you when you came in to sit. But anyway.
And then it got moved after the crystal ball caused a fire from the sun coming in.
Yeah. But he was teaching casually, but occasionally he would flip into this Mahamudra gaze. At first I thought it was kind of corny, but a couple of times it stretched out very interesting way. And it was just really fun to have. I mean, this is an old guy, but he was very up to date and unique in teaching. And I remember that happening in the old reading room of the Carnegie Library. He would stop what he was doing and talking, and he would do this Mahamudra gaze for a few seconds. And it took me a while to realize he was kind of trying to demonstrate something.
So
Neat.
I have a little tech experiment that I want to do again, which is having Anandi lead us in singing the anthem, speaking of symbolism. And let's see if this is going to work.
Anytime then?
Yes.
In heaven the turquoise dragon thunders, the tiger's lightning flashes abroad. The lion's mane spreads turquoise clouds, Garuda spans the threefold world. Fearless the warriors of Shamba, the majestic Darigdans on Vajra thrones. The Sakyang king joins heaven and earth. Thus Pakyang Wango harvests peace. The trumpet of fearlessness resounds. The victorious banner flies. Temporal and spiritual glory expands. Rejoice, the great eastern sun arises. Rejoice, the great eastern sun arises. Rejoice, the great eastern sun.
She has a nice voice.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to hear someone who can actually sing that on tune.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, you know, she's a professional singer.
I met Anandi during this time I was talking about the very early years, and her mother, Rachel Farrow, called me from New York. Whether it was a folk singer or a singer, I never knew her, but she got my name somehow. Could you pick up my daughter? She's in high school here in Portland. And could you give her rides to the Shambhala Center? And so I first met her on Tuesday evenings. I agreed to do that. And she was a very quiet child. And now she's a very sort of bloomed as a wonderful woman. But it's funny that I knew her then.
I remember when I first moved here, Anandi was like 13.
And then she went away, I think was at Carme Chilling, and was bouncing back from something.
Her mother was a very good singer also. I took a singing class with her at Naropa in about 1977 or so. And she was married to Robin Ford, you know, who was a good guitarist at the time. And yeah, she was quite a good singer also. Yeah, I've never heard Anandi sing, so it was really nice to hear her. Yeah.
Everyone, I'm going to leave temporarily. We're going to have an intermission at some point. You're all welcome to chat. While we, oh, John, you're muted.
So just to wrap up this recording, I'm going to share one more sound, and then that will be the end of the recording, and then we can hang out informally. So